So, this is the first video I have produced, or will have produced, hopefully, by the time I'm finished, in a long time. I hope it will be the first of a series, which will follow. I'm reading it from my MacBook, because I don't have the capacity to memorize it. It's called In Defense of National Socialism. Needless to say, but I'll say it anyway, this is not a defense of Nazism, but of the concept of National Socialism, which combines nationalism with socialism and was cleverly hijacked by the Nazis, who incorporated it into the very name of their party, enabling them to exploit it for their own evil purposes. It is no coincidence that nationalism and socialism have been such popular and powerful political motivators over the course of the past 2 centuries. It is because both are deeply rooted in evolved human nature, which is tribal and territorial. And it was not just the Nazis who exploited it. All politicians appeal to our sense of national identity, nationalism, and to our socialist ideals, which we all have, even conservatives and people who condemn socialism. We are naturally inclined to share with our tribe, which is the inspiration for socialism. We also naturally want to defend our tribe and its territory against rival tribes, which are naturally inclined, or rather which we are naturally inclined to classify either as friendly and allied, or as rivals or enemies, which is what leads to conflicts and wars. Neither is it a coincidence that we are taught to trivialize, ridicule, or demonize human tribalism, thereby leaving state and capital free to manipulate it and exploit it for their own mercenary purposes. That capital is mercenary, we all know. That the state is also mercenary is less well known, because those we look to as authorities in understanding it have a huge personal and professional self-interest, largely subconscious, in not recognizing this. They want themselves and everyone else to believe that their state employer serves the best interests of society at large. We need to liberate the concept of National Socialism from continued Nazi occupation. Rename it grassroots democratic multinational socialism, and learn how to harness it for the good of all humanity, instead of for just one tribe or nation, or for evil, as the Nazis did. The biggest obstacle to this is the nation state, which wants to rule society from the top down, rather than allow it to be ruled grassroots democratically from the bottom up, and also seeks to legitimize itself, its ruling elites, and the immense power they wield and abuse by deceitfully posing as a single nation. There are no nations or nation states, only mercenary patron states, deceitfully posing as nations. The state conflates and confounds very different aspects of the original tribal environment in which human nature evolved, long before the first states and civilizations emerged from it, with the modern nation-state now deceitfully posing as our tribe or nation, our intra- and inter-tribal environment itself, while at the same time facilitating society's self-exploitation as an extra-tribal environment on a par with the natural environment, which it also facilitates the exploitation of, to the personal advantage of its ruling elites, capital, and favoured, especially wealthy and academic, formerly priestly clients, at the expense of society at large, and ultimately its self-destruction, the recognition of which is hopefully enough to motivate us to correct this fatal flaw in civilization itself. The nation-state is based on lies, deceit, and a regime of rewards and intimidation, its primary purpose being to facilitate society's self-exploitation, as described in the previous paragraph. Diversity is a modern secular incarnation of the state's age-old strategy of divide and rule, largely subconscious or obscured by Orwellian doublethink, whereby society is divided into a morally superior, now supposedly non-tribal, unprejudiced, colourblind and xenophilic elite on the one hand, and the morally inferior, naturally evolved human nature being what it is, tribal, prejudiced, not colourblind, but nativist and xenophobically inclined masses on the other, who must submit to the authority of and domination by their moral superiors. A moral animal like ourselves can be manipulated and controlled by a regime of moral reward and intimidation as well, or even better than it can be by one of material and physical rewards and intimidation. The nation state, including liberal democracies like Britain and America, uses both. It is, in effect, a modern secular replacement for the power political role of medieval church ideology. Original sin, that is disobedience of divine, i.e. priestly, state authority, has been replaced by racial prejudice, the natural human inclination, like original sin, to identify with members of one's own tribe, race or ethnic group, which was made responsible, wrongly, for the Holocaust and equated with the evils of Nazi racism, and which only submission to priestly, academic, state, ideology and authority can save us from eternal damnation for, not as heathens and heretics as in the past, but as bigots, xenophobes, nativists and racists. Liberating the concept of National Socialism from Nazi occupation will not be easy, because there are powerful vested interests, personal, political, professional, academic and ideological, much of it subconscious, which want it to remain where it is in order to demonize it. Renaming it grassroots democratic multinational socialism should help a lot, because it is more accurately descriptive of what it is, and hardly something the Nazis themselves would have subscribed to. The Führer, i.e. Hitler, would have abhorred the idea of grassroots democracy and of multinational statehood.